Good day, everyone, and welcome to Purposive Communication class. For today, we will be discussing the lesson 6 titled Communication for Academic Purposes. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to achieve the following. First, identify and apply the different stylistic elements of a good academic writing. Second, develop a social political analysis paper or a position paper. And third, write a research-based documented essay observing stylistic conventions of academic writing. A part of this discussion is, of course, the topic academic writing. The academic writing refers to a style of expression that researchers use to define the intellectual boundaries of their disciplines and specific areas of expertise. It is designed to convey agreed meaning about complex ideas or concepts for a group of scholarly experts. For you to have a good academic writing, you have to observe and to apply these stylistic elements. The accepted form of academic writing in diverse disciplines can vary considerably depending on the intended audience and the organizational outline. However, most university level academic papers require careful attention to the following stylistic elements. The first one is the overall view. Unlike journalistic or fiction writing, the overall structure of academic writing is formal and logical. Thus, it is important to take note of the following points. The paper must be cohesive and possess a logically organized flow of ideas. This suggests that the various parts are connected to form a unified whole. There should be transitional devices or narrative links between sentences and paragraphs so that the readers will be able to follow your argument. And then the introduction should include an explanation of how the rest of the paper is organized and all the sources are properly cited throughout the paper. It is done to avoid the allegation of plagiarism, since plagiarism is considered as academic dishonesty. The next stylistic element of good academic writing is the language. The analysis of research problems in diverse disciplines is often complex and multidimensional. Hence, it is significant that you use language that fits your audience and matches your purpose. Inappropriate language use can undermine your argument, damage your credibility, or alienate your audience. Here are some points to remember. Uh, the key to successful writing focuses on the levels of formality and conciseness that underscores writing in a style that your audience expects and that fits your purpose. Next, use clear topic sentences and well-structured paragraphs to enable readers to follow your line of thinking without a difficulty. Also, you have to avoid using in-group jargons or specialized language used by groups of like-minded individuals. You have to bear in mind that you only use in-group jargon when you are writing for members of that group. You should never use jargon for a general audience without first explaining it. Next is you have to avoid using slang or idiomatic expressions in general academic writing, as well as you have to avoid euphemism, of course, or that is the word that avails the truth or other deceitful language. It's like what we call the sugar coating. Also, we have to avoid using biased language, including language with a racial, ethnic group, or gender bias, or language that is stereotypal. Aside from that, another stylistic element is the academic tone. The overall tone refers to the writer's voice in a written work. It is what the readers might perceive as the writer's attitude, bias, or personality. When writing in an academic tone, you must take into consideration the following points. Like, you have to present the arguments of others objectively, not subjective, wherein you put your emotion. Okay. And of course, with an appropriate narrative tone. Describe these arguments accurately and without bias or loaded language whenever you present an argument or a position that you disagree with. Next is investigate the research problem from an authoritative perspective. You have to state the strong points of your argument confidently by using language that is neutral, not dismissive or confrontational. Also, we have to avoid broad generalizations using oversweeping adjectives, adverbs, qualifiers, or emotional language and inflammatory language. Next is academic diction. For the academic diction, it refers to the linguistic choices a writer makes to convey ideas or standpoint effectively. So when writing in an academic diction, you must take note the following. The awareness of the words you use is vital because words that have almost the same denotation or dictionary definition can have very different connotations or implied meaning. You have to use concrete and specific words that convey precise meaning. Explain that what you mean within that context of how that word or phrase is used within a discipline. Next is be consistent with your labels. Call people what they want to be called. Use gender inclusive language and avoid placing gender identifiers in front of nouns. Also, we have to avoid using slang expressions like the very informal language that is usually spoken rather than written. Uh, the metaphors or the figures of speech, of course, those are words or phrases that are used in a non-literal sense for rhetorical or for vivid effect. And of course, the jargons, the special words or expressions used by a particular profession or a group and are difficult for others to understand. And lastly, we have to use our personal pronouns carefully. Generally, you also want to avoid using the personal pronoun I in an academic paper unless you are writing a reflection paper or a reaction paper. So writing from the first person point of view is somehow uh, not acceptable in academic writing. So we really have to use the third person point of view because it makes your paper sound uh, more assertive, more professional, and credible. Next stylistic element is the punctuation. To establish the narrative tone of their work, scholars rely on precise words and language. Thus, punctuation marks are used very deliberately. And the common punctuations are the period, the comma, the semicolon, and of course, the colon. We all know that the period is used at the end of the sentence. It could also be used in the abbreviations or even in the numbers, specifically in the decimals. For the comma, it is used up to separate items in series or even to set in the appositive, set off a positive like you are giving more additional more description or additional information to the pronoun that you have used, like for example, Sir Joseph comma a purposive communication instructor comma teaches academic writing. Okay, so that is the appositive. Then also the semicolons, they are used to join two independent clauses that are not connected with a coordinate conjunction. And it also has the same weight with the period because the period indicates a full stop. That is the same with the semicolon. Then the colons, they are used to introduce a list and before a final clause that explains something on the sentence. So those are the different stylistic elements that you have to use when you are writing academically. And since we mentioned that the academic writing is something formal and it is a factual, it is also important for us to cite our sources and our references, like, of course, the Google Scholar, which of course gives us information or some journals or some researches. It's a resource that provides us the list of a journal article or even some websites that focuses more on credible and scholarly sources. You also have this RefSeek. It is a resource that allows you to research specifically for documents, giving you a better chance of finding credible information to help you write your research paper. We also have what we call the ERIC, that stands for the Education Resources Information Center, or ERIC itself. It is a database that primarily focuses on education, but it also includes a number of related topics such as psychology, social work, and issues, other social issues. And then, of course, the dictionary, it is also a good source, of course, that could provide us some definition of terms are needed for our academic paper. Now, these are some of the examples of the academic papers. The first one is the socio-political paper. A socio-political analysis paper can be defined as an analysis of the economic, the social, and political factors that shape a particular country or situation, and how these factors impact the lives and thoughts of the people. It is considered as a powerful tool for understanding how countries work and what might be done to help them cope with their challenges in order to reform and or to set their priorities in a way that make them more likely to succeed. Another example of the academic paper is a position paper. For the position paper, it aims to generate a support on an issue. It describes the author's or organization's position on an issue and the rationale of that position. It is based on facts that provide a solid foundation of the author's argument. So, in a position paper, the authors should use evidence to support positions such as the statistical evidence or the indisputable dates or and events, validate position with authoritative references or primary source quotations, examine the strengths and weaknesses of the position, and evaluate the possible solutions and suggest outcomes or courses of action. Then the last example of the academic paper is the research-based documented essay. So this research-based documented essay is a piece of writing in which the authors incorporate information such as facts, arguments, and opinions taken from the writing of authorities in a particular field. This type of paper presents and supports the thesis by relying on outside or secondary sources for development. It is similar to a review of literature on the accounts that the author synthesis and or the author synthesize and identify the gaps in the writings of authorities in a specific field and then generate a new thesis statement out of them. So those are some of the examples of the academic papers. Again, the social political analysis paper, the position paper, and the research-based documented essay. So that ends the discussion for the academic writing. And I will be leaving you a quotation from Stephen King that if you want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others: read a lot and write a lot. So with that, thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from that discussion.